It's a movie review, y'all.
Yay.
Listen. Let me tell you something, man. First of all, shout out to everybody watching us right now. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, please hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed to the channel. We get a lot of good stuff that we want to share with all of y'all. And just help the channel grow. So do that. We're doing a Sinners movie review, y'all. We've all seen the movie. Everybody here has seen the movie, right? You guys have all seen the movie?
Oh yeah.
So
This is a spoiler film. Where's our spoiler? Where's our spoiler video? Did you do a spoiler video?
no,
All right, y'all been warned. We're gonna spoil the hell out this film. I mean, just to let you know. Early, just initial impressions. I want everyone to give their initial impressions. Derek, you start.
It was I thoroughly enjoyed it. This movie is what movie theaters and the cinema was made for. You definitely have to watch it in the theater. It's not, I wouldn't call it a horror, or I wouldn't call it just a horror. I think it crosses multiple genres, and I think it's going to be a something that's going to last for a while. I think it's going to have some staying power, personally.
Rich?
very good movie. Very good movie. Definitely enjoyed it. It's going to be considered a classic. So yeah, it was a good movie. I won't call it great. I'm gonna say it was very, very good, but not great. You know what I'm saying? I got my reasons for not saying it's a great movie, but it's definitely a very good movie. So yeah.
We're gonna have to unpack that statement in a bit. I thought it was a dope film, man. Best movie I've seen this year. I would challenge anyone to name a movie that was better than this movie that's come out this year. There's just not any. I mean, objectively speaking, this is the best movie that's come out this year. Is it perfect? Sure, there's a couple things that we can criticize about it, which we'll talk about. But yeah, this was a dope film. I'm asking myself, Ryan Coogler's done a few films now.
Mhm.
Is this his best film? Including Black Panther. Is this his best film?
You asking us, or you just asking the
I'm asking everybody, but I'm starting with y'all. Oh boy, there's the laugh.
I'm going to say no. This is not his best film.
What's his best film?
His best film is Black Panther.
Okay.
Is it his best? No. I feel like it's one of his best. But Black Panther to me is a great movie. This is a very good movie, but Black Panther was a great movie because of what it represented for the culture and whatnot. And while this was a very cultural, related film, it's not as good as Black Panther. Y'all can say what you want about Wakanda, but Wakanda that's the bar. And while that was in that area, just fell a little short, so yeah.
Yeah. Jayme Lawson for Aurora Monroe. She's in the top 10, most definitely. All right, so my thoughts on it. I can't say I disagree. I mean, when people in chat are also saying, like, if you put in Fruitvale Station and Black Panther, you can decide between those two which one's his best film. This is probably a number 3, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's a brilliant film. Shout out to Marwan Williams with the $10 super chat, getting us started off right. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
And with that, you get this.
Donation. It's a donation. I thought it was the trash. Don't be hitting on me. Thank you.
All right, so let's break it down. This, let me first start by saying this. You could label it, if you're looking at the genres, and say it's a horror film. But in reality, you're probably a good 30 to 45 minutes into the film before you see any horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first 30 to 45 minutes, it's just a film. Not just a film, it's a period piece film that's brilliantly shot. The cinematography in this film is spectacular. For those who have watched it or may not have watched it, if you do go see it, first of all, go see it. But when you do go see it, I would highly recommend that you try and see it in IMAX, which is what it was filmed to be seen in. It is a widescreen film. There are certain panoramic shots that can only be appreciated in IMAX form. And some of those shots are just beautiful. And they really help to set the tone, and they help to have the viewer transported into this world, into this time period. I love period pieces that are so well done that you forget you're watching a film and you feel like you've traveled back in time and you're just an unobserved observer. And I think this film has those types of tones in it. Ruth Carter's costumes, the sets, the music. We can spend a good 10, 15 minutes talking about probably one of the most brilliant characters in this film, and that's the music. Ryan Coogler's partner in crime when it comes to music, Ludwig Göransson, Oscar winner. I think he's won 2 Oscars for both Black Panther films. The man is a phenomenal musician. I was reading some of his backstory. Although his family's from Europe, his father was a big blues guy. He loved blues. In fact, he was originally going to be named after a blues artist, but his mother said, no, let's name him after Beethoven instead. But he's a big blues fan. He's a big fan of music in general. The music in this film is it is a part of the art. What were you guys' take on the music?
Extremely central to the story, central to the lore, and he did everything he could to make sure that he had the right people.
Uh-oh.
They had the right people able to perform the right way to meet the requirements. This was, music was top notch. Here comes Paul.
Okay.
So,
How about you, Rich?
Yeah. The music, first of all, blues has been a part of my life since a child. My father was a heavy, hardcore fan of blues music. In fact, every Monday night, there were 2 things that were a constant in my life: Monday Night Football and blues on KTSU. And that was for years. That was my Monday nights, football and the blues. And so for me, as a young man, kind of like, I didn't really, because blues was in me or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like a part of my DNA. Didn't have no real appreciation for it. It wasn't until I got a little bit older that I really have an appreciation for blues. And so, and my dad didn't listen to like commercial blues. My dad was Muddy Waters, stuff like that. My dad was hardcore Mississippi Delta blues, which is what this film got most of its score and all that was from the Mississippi Delta blues. And so the music in this film was very, very powerful. It was spiritual. It captured so much of the Black experience in it. For Black people in this country, that's the constant that's been with us. And the character that Delroy Lindo played, he was talking about the blues, and he said this was not something that they created here. This was something that they brought over with them. And so people know that the banjo, that was nods to history all throughout this film. But people know that the banjo, shout out to all you white folks that think that y'all created country music. Sorry. The banjo is straight out the motherland. And so there was, this what I loved about it is that you had authentic bluesmen type style in this. Delroy Lindo plays a guy who's basically is an alcoholic, but he's a legend where he is. And he's recruited by the twins to play it at this new juke joint. And he's like, whoa. You talking about the young guy, their younger cousin. So what you know about the blues? You don't know nothing about the blues. And he had to show him, you know what I'm saying? Because that was the thing that, real blues, Mississippi Delta blues, that was not something that you could just do. You had to be entrenched in the culture and in the surroundings to know what the blues is even. So, I mean, I was really like a hog and slop. I was right at home.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the backdrop of this film. The movie takes place in Mississippi, 1932. Delta blues is a big part of this area, this time period. It was cool. Delroy Lindo's character mentioned the fact that the blues was something that was brought over with us to this country. The blues is America's first American music form. I mean, those would argue jazz is truly America's full first music form. But blues preceded jazz. Blues is the forefathers of multiple music genres that came afterwards. It's the root, it's the soul, it's the essence of American music.
You know what, Paul? I don't mean to interrupt you, but the only nod to the blues or to jazz in this movie was the piano playing.
Yeah,
there was no horn. If you peeked out that scene where all of this gumbo of music was kind of like meshing together, there was no horn. It literally was guitar, percussion, piano throughout. But the reason why I bring that up is because what you said, that jazz being the quote unquote original American quote unquote made thing, all the rest of this stuff came from somewhere else. Because you also got to remember that there was nods to the native music, also Chinese. It's a part of that as well. And so it's just interesting how they laid that out. It was definitely an art. I definitely want to get this soundtrack to just listen to it, because that was amazing.
Well, this movie starts out at the very beginning, talking about music. It says music, if played in a certain way, can breach the barriers between worlds. right?
Yep.
Metaphorically,
Mhm.
and in this movie, literally, breaches the barriers between worlds.
Not just that,
Um,
the barrier between life and death, and the
Yeah.
barriers of time.
right, right. So this movie centers around, you would think, to these two brothers. And we could show the brothers. You could bring the pictures up as we talk about it.
Smoking stack.
Smoke and Stack. Michael B. Jordan. I wonder if he got paid twice. Because he got credited with two different characters. These are twin brothers, Smoke and Stack. They're from this town in Mississippi. They went off into World War I, where they learned how to fight. And when they came back, they spent some time in Chicago, being gangsters, reportedly, allegedly, working with alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
and may have worked out some type of what do you call it? Fistful of dollars deal, where they set two warring families against each other and stole their money. Right? They come back to Mississippi with a truck of cash and guns.
And some alcohol too.
And some Irish whiskey. So presumably they stole from both the Italians and the Irish.
It was beer. It wasn't whiskey.
Huh?
It wasn't. It wasn't. It was beer.
Yep.
Irish beer. So they come back and they're like, look, we have the money to build something of our own, right? We're going to open our own juke joint. We're going to buy this sawmill that used to be run by the Klan. There's literally blood on the floor, presumably from probably some brother getting lynched.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to this guy Hogwood, who is the grand wizard of the Klan, and who's going to sell them the sawmill for cash money. The two brothers want to have a space. They want to be businessmen. They want to be business owners. They want to be entrepreneurs. And they want, at the same time, they want to have something for us, for their own, for us, by us. I almost want to say they even quoted that in the film. I mean, it seemed
they came up. Yeah, it was said.
It was said, for us, by us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something we can all appreciate here at Black Comic Lords. Someone says, don't the elder yardies say that Kumina invites a spirit, and some say lead to oh man, look, we can't take it there. First of all, we don't romp with duppies, so we're not going to discuss that. We're not going to have that discussion in this discussion. But yeah, man, the two brothers, you know, shout out to Michael B. Jordan. I love the fact that he is able to establish nuances in the personalities of these two guys. Smoke is sort of calm and collective, thoughtful. Stack is a little bit more wild, right? Ruthie Carter also distinguishes the two brothers in the color schemes. You got Smoke in the blue, Stack in the red, and he's a little bit more showy, which sort of also shows his personality, right? Because he's the guy who's the fast talker. He's always positive, always sure of himself. Smoke is a little bit more reserved, contemplative. So he shows those nuances between the way the two brothers act, they speak, even the way they move. If you watch the film, Smoke and Stack have different walk patterns. You know, they have different swag.
Did you also notice that Smoke had I don't know what you call it, trembles? He couldn't hold his hand still.
Yes, with his left hand, he still had trembles. You can't determine if that's nerve damage or just PTSD from the war. You'd assume it's probably PTSD from the war. If he's right-handed, it doesn't affect his aim, certainly. But yeah, I mean, this. Let's get into the characters. Let's go through each one of these characters.
All right. So we talked about Smoke and Stack. Let's go with
Miles
Sammy.
I don't know anything about this brother. I know that this is his first film. I know that he is a singer.
He's a gospel singer.
He's a gospel singer.
Yeah.
And in this film, this young man who's 21 years old, I believe, but he's playing, I guess, what, 17, 18-year-old guy in the movie. This young man has a voice. He has a voice. When he speaks, okay. But when he sings, brother sings. There's a voice that comes out this young man that you have to check the credits, but like, nah, bro. Like who this was dubbed over clearly. Who was the real singer?
It was live singer.
It's him.
Yep.
It's him.
And it was performed live.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, they said that on some interviews. By the way, there was a question. Had no clue he's a gospel singer. In actuality, I think his mother is a minister, and he comes from a long line, I think, of ministers.
How apropos.
Yeah. And I guess he was one of the stars of a Steve Harvey singing contest about 7 years ago as well. So,
word?
Yeah. So, and you go back and watch that video as a little kid. Had pipes then too.
Let's see. Anthony Mazzano says to me to go back and ask his question. Would you say Stax is basically the more violent and chaotic one, but is it just violent for the sake of being violent, or is he more intellectually brutal? I don't think either one of them is just violent for the sake of being violent. I think when they use violence, it's always for a purpose. They don't just go out and just start beating on people. But they do stuff that's always for a reason. Even when he shoots the two guys trying to rob the truck, he's doing that for a reason. He's making a statement. He's letting people know, hey, I'm back in town. He's putting his flex out that I still got it. I'm still who I am. That's everything's intentional. These guys don't do anything without a reason. They came to Mississippi with a plan. But getting back to Sammy. Sammy is his character is the cousin. He's the younger cousin they left behind. And what's interesting about Sammy, he's a musician. His dad, their uncle, is a preacher in this church. And before they left, before Smoke and Stax left, Stax gave Sammy a guitar. But he told him the story behind the guitar is that it belonged to some great blues singer who was in league with the devil and had this really bad, sad backstory, and they got it from him. And so they're giving him this famous blues singer's guitar. As it turns out, the guitar actually came from his father, their father, who may or may not have been killed by Smoke, I guess. He was a violent guy who was abusive to the boys, particularly to Stack, and presumably Smoke killed the father to save his brother. The father was said to be an evil man. He was a bad man. Everyone knew him as an evil man, which is, I think, partially, and the fact that he played music and the fact that his brother, the preacher, does not want his son to use the guitar to go play the devil's music, the blues. This makes you wonder just why was he so violent? Why was he so evil? And he was a musician. The guitar is kind of another character in this film. Do you have a picture of the guitar?
I'll find one.
So Sammy decides to rebel against his father because he's raised in the church. And the father wants him to come back to the church. Put the guitar down. The only part I never understood, the father said, when Sammy comes into the church in a flashback scene, the guitar is there and Sammy's looking at it. And the father says, yeah, I have the guitar. And I was wondering, why did the father have the guitar in the church? You guys ever figure that out?
Yeah. Because if the guitar is in the church, his son is going to have to come to church.
Oh.
That's what I think.
What do you think, Rich?
Well, I mean, he was there he was going to play the guitar in church. He knew his father, he knew his son was a musician. And so it was like, okay, here's the guitar here. He knows that's a carrot for him. And, you know, it's either play the devil's music or play for God. That's kind of the choices. And so Sammy is kind of like, you know, I have this gift in me. And he explains it to him when he's at the juke joint talking to the people, and he said, you know, he wrote a song, and it was about his dad, and it was a lie. In the song, he says that he lied to his dad because he loved the blues,
right?
And so it was one of those things where the father understood, and that's why he didn't really go after him or, you know, kind of bash him or whatever. It's like, you know, he told me, he said, I'll be back by morning or whatever for church. And so, because ultimately a lot of people, when they play secular music, their origins, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time is in the church. And so this is, which is interesting about how they viewed or how the church is depicted in this. I know a lot of people trying to get at Ryan Coogler about it, from the sense that, you know, it really painted the church as a place where it didn't have as much value as, quote unquote, the secular or the spirituality that's outside of the church's parameters. And we understand why that analysis is made, because the musician Delroy Lindo, I can't remember his character's name, but he
Delta Slim.
Delta Slim. He made a point to say that, you know, we didn't, you know, this music is all of us or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And that the church, that was what they gave us. But we came here with this music, you know? And so it's one of those things where that's part of the wrestling for Sam. Gifted musician, probably loves the church, but he also happens to love the blues as well. Yeah.
And there's another point to it. When you're that gifted, you know, you're going to attract all sorts of people to you. So you're going to face a lot more temptation than the person who's not quite as gifted. And that's another thing I'm pretty sure his father knew.
Yeah. And Derek, that's actually alluded in the very, very beginning of the movie, when the narrator says that, you know, when you're able to break those veil, it not only attracts the past and the future, but evil as well.
Yeah.
So that was stated in the movie.
Jay Wilkes says a little bit of Stack and Smoke's father's evil may have been passed to Sammy through the guitar. Yeah. Is it through the guitar? I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but is it just through the guitar, or is it through blues itself? I mean, what is the blues? What is the blues?
Well, the blues is, people make this distinction sometimes between the blues and the spirituals. There's a known theologian named James Cone who wrote a book called The Spiritual and the Blues, and how they kind of mirror one another. The blues kind of like speaks to life, the hardness of life. And many times it's about losing a woman, you know what I'm saying? And it's about the hard times of life and life in general. Whereas gospel or the spirituals give you a perspective of whether it's you're talking about the here and now or the by and by, or hope. There's no hope in the blues.
That's exactly what I was hoping you're going to say.
Yes, sir.
Spirituals are about hope, right?
Yes.
They're about upliftment in adversity. The blues is not that.
No.
The blues comes from pain. The blues comes from anguish. The blues is the wailing sound. It's the lamentation that you give out of pain, right? It is pure, raw essence of pain. It is the expression of pain and anguish, right? Whereas spirituals are about upliftment and hope.
Yes.
So when it's not the guitar itself that necessarily has the evil, it's the fact that he chooses to use that. It's an instrument, right? It's a tool. Tools can be used to create, or they can be used to tear something down. So when he is in the church, the Father encourages him to use the guitar because as a tool, it's used to uplift and to inspire hope in the church. But when he uses it for blues, he tears things apart. In the church, he builds, he inspires, he uplifts. But when he uses for the blues, he rips. He rips the veil between our reality and the other reality apart. He stirs things up. He causes chaos. But that pain comes from somewhere. It's a miracle this kid is so young and be able to express that. But that's kind of what they're talking about when they said the power to rend the veil between these two realities is released by certain types of music. And they mentioned this Irish type of music.
Yep, that was in there too.
Right. So it's like that. I mean, that Irish blues, the Choctaws had their type of music. Everyone has their own type of pain-filled music, which apparently can cause things to happen. But that's what makes this film so fascinating and really establishes what is the term? Southern Gothic film. A Southern Gothic film.
Anthony Manzano, he says, BCL and Rich, when they make that statement about the blues being the devil's music, did people back in the 30s actually believe that jazz and blues was the devil's music? They did. Here's the reason why that was considered, or the music at the time was considered the devil's music. I hope y'all ready for this, because it's a two-part thing. One, to understand the scriptures or the Bible, you understand that Lucifer is the chief musician. The top musician that has ever existed was the devil. Now, of course, he was Lucifer before he failed. Now, just because he failed does not mean he lost his ability to be the chief musician or to be one who can create music. Most of the music that is made, Lucifer, we call him Satan now, is responsible for. That's the text. That's not my opinion. That's what the word says. Okay, here's the second part of that. Second part of that is you got to understand this was during the time where Jim Crow, racism, lynching was going on, and this music was created and performed by Black people. The white folks that feared this music called it the devil's music to try to scare white people from wanting to be a part of it. That's the history as well. So in this text, it's interesting that the light-skinned sister, well, I'm probably sure we'll get to her in a minute, she is kind of passing in the film. They don't really go into that, but she is. Because when I think Sammy sees her, he looks in and he tells, oh boy, he said, The white woman staring at you. And of course, he had this relationship with her at one time. She's very fair skinned. So people back then passed. When they could pass for white, that's what they did. So it's a lot in this film. A lot in this film. A lot of threads that you can pull on, if I can say it like that. But for as the music was concerned, that's how they saw it. They saw this music as the blues or the devil's music, because let's just be honest, a lot of this music was created under the weed, acid, alcohol. They were under influences, and alcohol is called spirits. So y'all can do with that what y'all will, but that's where all of that comes from. So yeah.
Jay Wilk says, in some ways, the music itself cursed Sammy. The music led to the best and worst of his life. He was forever cursed with remembering that night. Memories are time travel.
Absolutely. And I just want to go back to the point, anybody with an extreme amount of talent, they're going to face the same challenges as Sammy. And note that the twins, they play dual roles. They brought him to that juke joint, right?
Yep.
They recruited him and brought him there. Once he got there, they're protecting him. And went as far as Smoke.
Yes.
Told him, this
done.
is it. Done after this. So, but this situation is no different from some, blue chip basketball player, football player, anybody else with an extreme amount of talent.
That scene where Stack told him, this is it, you're not going to play. Was that before or after he did his big number at the juke joint?
That was after the big number. I'm quite sure. And we need to talk about that for a moment. Yeah.
And go ahead, Derek. Go ahead.
No, go on. No, go on.
No, I was just going to say that you got to understand, this is a kid that they were very fond of their little cousin, and they kind of viewed him as, he was talented, but he was innocent at the same time. And you got to remember that when he does his thing or whatever, the old girl that he was fawning over, he took in one of the rooms, and they got busy. And so he was literally watching his little cousin be corrupted.
Yes.
And that was something that he didn't want for him. And so it's one of those things where, Smoke and Stacks, they understood who they are. They were gangsters. And, it's like, okay, most gangsters are not in the business of corrupting people, even though that's what they can do. So with this kid being impressionable and wanting to, do this, love the blues and that kind of thing, it was something about it that just made him say, you know what? Nah, I don't want you doing this no more. I don't want you messing your life up like this. Because you got to understand, he sees not only the innocence, but he also sees the end result, which was Delta Slim, and what the music and all that can do to you.
Right.
So, what do you want to do next? You want to talk about Delta Slim for a minute, or do we want to talk?
Yeah, let's go to the next
scene.
Let's go to the next.
We'll go to Delta Slim.
Well, did we talk about the scene?
Let's talk about Delta Slim.
Let's talk about Delta Slim, because that scene's a whole conversation.
Mm-hmm. Delta Slim.
Delroy Lindo. I mean, this whole cast was incredible, but Delroy Lindo stole every scene he was in. This man is a master thespian. He brought his gravitas into every scene. He really sold a lot of these scenes for me personally. He's a legit talent. He's an A-list talent, in my opinion. But he tells a story. I think someone in the chat mentioned the fact that he tells a story about the pain of where his blues comes from. You know, and he reiterates that to Sammy, because Sammy's like, how are you able to do all this? And he talks about his own pain, because remember, that's what blues is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always motivated. The true brilliant artist, it comes from somewhere. And he talks about his backstory. And although when he's getting recruited by Stack to come play at the juke joint, his motivation is beer and be able to play his music. It wasn't even about money.
No.
Stack is like, I'll pay you twice as much as other places playing to come play at my place. He's like, man, I get beer and I get the accolades from having a steady place of people that love me and want to hear my music. Why would I go to some fly-by-night place just to get some money out of you?
Yep.
Well, because we'll give you better beer, Irish beer, and we'll still pay you twice as much money. And this is going to be something that's going to last. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll do it.
Yeah, once he had the swig of that beer, he was done.
He was good. He was good.
Rich, did you catch this reference?
Smokestack Lightning by Howlin' Wolf. Yeah, I did. The blues men, they had a way of, some of them, not all of them, but most of them had a way of wailing.
Yeah.
We're used to hearing women in expression, whether it's praising God or whether it's mourning, that they wail. But men wail too. We just wail in a different way. So you got cats like Howlin' Wolf, that's why it was called Howlin' Wolf, that were able to sing and express themselves. And by the way, someone mentioned earlier about wind instruments. And yes, he did play harmonica, but we were talking about horns, not wind instruments. So I could definitely see the parallels there. It's, what's funny though is that there's a Delta Slim in every city. In Houston, we had a guy named Little Joe Washington, who was a bluesman that played the Fitzgeralds in Houston, and he used to ride. He used to ride a bike. He didn't have a car. He used to ride a bike to perform. But there are guys like this all over America, playing the blues, living this life for real. Rappers like to talk about keeping it real. There's some real blues men out here living this thing for real. And so, yeah, dope character. And to Robin Monroe's point, Lindo recounting his brother's lynching was very heavy. And it was interesting too, man. That one scene when they were driving down that road and he saw the guys on the chain gang, that rhythm. Like I said, the music in this thing was just, this thing bled music, literally.
Yeah.
And so that was I know y'all talking about the other scene, but that, for me, that was one of the most powerful scenes.
If this film does not win an Oscar for music, I don't know what to tell you. I can't imagine a film coming out this year, because we're still at the beginning of the year. I can't imagine a film coming out this year that's going to have better music than what this movie had. There's just no way this film does not win an Oscar for music. If it doesn't, then something beyond miraculous came out, or there's just something wrong with the Oscars, or something else wrong with the Oscars, to be specific. Let's go on to our next character.
All right.
The women. That is a very reductive way of describing them, but that's the role that both of these characters, both the actresses, play. Men are oftentimes defined by their women. Both Smoke and Stack when you really get to know who they are, comes from scenes with these two characters. It's not until they interact with these characters that you really get to know the other side of both of these men. What really motivates them beyond simply being gangsters? I mean, simply portraying a gangster is easy, but portraying a gangster with some depth requires a little bit more work. And both of these characters help to elicit those sides of the men and help to define them. Wunmi Mosaku is a fantastic actress. I think the earliest thing I recall seeing her in was Lovecraft Country. I'm sure she's done stuff before that, but that's the first thing I remember her in. And she was a scene stealer in that television show.
She's a British actress too.
Is she?
Yes, she
I
is.
didn't know she was British.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She plays the town. What do you call it? The hoodoo.
Yeah, hoodoo.
Right. She plays the town hoodoo, who had a relationship with Smoke before he left, and they even had a child together, which apparently died.
Yeah, Collector Blurred Niche pointed out that she was in
Loki as well. She played the captain in the TVA. Forget her name, was like number 15 or something. I don't remember. Yes, the Collector. She's all Bear Woman. For real. What's in the opening scene when where these two meet at her place, he's like picking something up and she tells him, put that down or I'm going to cut your neck. And she puts a blade to his neck. And I swear she looked like she was really going to cut him. I mean, you would not think this is a woman that was involved with him and who loved this man from the reaction that she gave him. But the same scene allowed him to open up as to what happened, because both Smoke and Stack ultimately left both of these women behind in the midst of their relationships.
In 7 years.
For 7 years. Both were decisions these men both regretted on some level. These are both of these men's true loves. What did the items on the child's grave represent? I don't know much about hoodoos, man. I'm Jamaican. We don't talk about that type of thing. But presumably it has probably something to do with hoodoo stuff. The milk, there was milk in one of the bottles.
And there's milk. There's something looked like a dagger or something that was stabbed in the ground, and then the rock with the handprint.
Almost looked like a bedpost carving.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It looked like a bedpost carving. So it might have been the bedpost from the child's crib. The milk in the bottle might have been breast milk, to show that her connection to her son. I don't remember what the third item was.
A rock with the handprint.
Was that what it was? A rock with a handprint?
Mm-hmm. Child's handprint. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, those are what those items represented. Pericles says her name was Hunter B15, Verity Willis. Thank you. I knew it was something 15. All right. Hailee Steinfeld's character, Mary. So we sort of just view her initially when we first see her as the white woman who had a relationship with Stack. We later find out there's a little bit more to her. Actually, in the same scene that we meet her, she walks away and Sammy makes a joke like, I'm not certain she's all white when she's walking away. But we find out that her maternal was it maternal or fraternal? It was her maternal grandmother or father was black.
Half black.
So that makes her what, a quadroon? Is that the term we use, a quadroon?
Yeah, that's it.
So she's a quarter 1/16 black or whatever, however you define it. Something I'm sure she has to keep under wraps in that society, because she ultimately, after Stack leaves, marries a white dude who apparently has some money. But she still has love for Stack. She has a scene with him where they finally talk about what happened between them. Why did he leave? And you remember Stack is this boisterous, devil may care dude, but he, his hat's off and he talks to her and he goes, look, ultimately I left because I care about you so much and I knew what I was going to go and do. You couldn't go. And if I care about your feelings and I care about your well-being, and I'm summarizing, if I care about your well-being and I want you to be happy, I love you so much, I want you to be happy. And I know you couldn't be happy with me. You deserve more than what I could give you. And that's why I left you, so that you could be happy. And then you just see this one tear come down her cheek as he walks away. And you see her shaking her head like, okay. At that moment, she decided, I want my man back. And that happened in a very violent way, because she subsequently becomes a vampire, and the first person she tries to interact with is Stack.
Paul, if I could just insert here quickly.
Please.
We've all, you can call this setup if you want to, but like you mentioned earlier, this is 40 minutes of the movie at least. That's been going on, all to get you really strong understanding of and empathy for each of these characters. What they're about. You start to care about them, whether they are the worst of sinners or not. And by the way, they all come together to pull off this event. So you're pulling for them all. And I think that's one of the magical things that that Coogler did in this movie, right? Is to pull that off so that you actually care for them, because what happens in the second half then becomes even more meaningful, right?
Right. I mean, he's able to tell a backstory. You know who these people are without really getting a lot of backstory, if that makes sense. Like, who each of these characters are from just a little bit of story that they tell. Each of them has a scene which helps define who they are. And their entire life story from that alone. I mean, there are things that you question, what have you, but you kind of know where they're coming from. And that takes skill. Really ensemble cast, man. There's just a couple other characters we could talk about here. It's a couple of the actors. We can jump into the Chows. Jean Lee played is Grace Chow, and Yao, guy only has one name, Yao, is Bo Chow. Now, I didn't find out until afterwards, there was actually a very large Chinese population in Mississippi back then.
They built the railroad.
I was going to say that they probably from building the railroad. Mm-hmm. There's a history throughout the Western Hemisphere of Chinese people being brought over to help with some type of industrial endeavor. In the Caribbean, where my family's from, Chinese people were brought in after slavery ended because the slaves demanded wages to do the jobs that they were previously doing for free. So the plantation owners for the sugarcane fields imported Chinese because they were working for less.
Same thing in Hawaii.
Or they would do it as indentured servitude, which is pretty much the same thing as slavery. So then you have a very large Chinese population in Jamaica as well.
Goes to show you that nothing is new under the sun.
Nothing is new under the sun, man.
These past. Here's the thing, and I mean recent. When Trump campaigned on the number of migrants that came to this country during the Biden administration, a lot of that was for cheap labor. A lot of that was for cheap labor. And that's the stinging history of America, that's what America does, that at her core, her greed at her core, it has always been about exploiting labor, manual labor.
That part.
This human trafficking on a large scale. They try to get you all misty-eyed over children being trafficked to they've been trafficking since they got off the Mayflower. It is what it is.
Let's run with that. There's one little theme that I want to point out here. Ultimately, and we'll talk about this more in a bit, this is a very American film. What I mean by that is it talks about the themes of what America truly is. And I might be jumping ahead of a little bit in our discussion. But the peoples that you have in this film, Black people, Native Americans, Chinese, Irish, even poor white trash, right? All of these people are people that have been taken advantage of under classism, right? Rich said this country's always been about greed. Yes, it has. It's always been about rich land-owning folk and everybody else, right? Our Constitution was written with the words freedom and equality for all, with the sub-paragraph, rich landowning white men. It's the part we always skip over. All of the people represented in this film have been marginalized to some degree. Mm-hmm. They all have.
Yep.
And it's interesting that you have this vampire come along who's presumably hundreds of years old before, if he's hundreds of years old, let's say he comes from ancient Ireland, right? He's a Celtic person. Let's say he comes back that far, which, by the way, Coogler could do a whole franchise with this. We'll talk about. His view of the world predates racism as we know it in this country, right? Because if you're that old, I mean, racism as a concept is a few hundred years old. If he's older than that, then he's not going to have the same view on racism as other people, which is why the first people he recruits are a couple Klan people to join the cause. And we'll get more into that once we get to that.
I mean, look, you there, you might as well stay there. Here's the history. White people that came to this country at the time, they weren't fond of the Irish. The Irish, matter of fact, the Irish, they would have signs say the Irish need not apply.
Right.
But at some point, they incorporated Irish people into whiteness, which Coogler, in my opinion, shows through this alliance with the Klansmen. and that is, if we could bring it to 2025, when 47 got elected, people were looking at some of the Latinos. How did y'all vote for this dude? They got incorporated. Some of them got incorporated into whiteness. Whiteness is a construct that they created to keep them in power. I'm just saying.
No. It's absolutely correct. I mean, as I said, all the peoples in this film, represented in this film, are peoples that have been marginalized to some degree. Even the redneck Klans people arguably represent the white underclass, the poor white trash, right? As much as these people hate black folk, it's in large part because they think the black folk are preventing them from being the rich white folk that they aspire to be. You're kind of in our way. We need to be equated to the rich land owning white folk, and immigrants and Indians and Negroes are the ones that prevent us from doing that. That's how racism is manipulated for economic reasons in this country. Didn't Remick convert the Klansmen out of convenience because they helped him with the indigenous vampire hunters? Absolutely. But here's the thing. He didn't simply just recruit them. He also made them part of his cause. Because ultimately, Remick, in his vampire powers, he says they share consciousness. They have a shared consciousness. They have each other's memories. They have each other's thoughts. When you share that consciousness, I mean, the big scene, right, is when you have them all doing the river dance outside. And you've got all these Mississippians singing old Irish, songs and dances. Where they learned that in the 5 minutes before that they just got turned into vampires. It's because they're sharing a consciousness and they're sharing his memories. Now, when you share all of that, are you a racist anymore? No, they said, we want to recruit you. We do this out of love. We're the people of love. You can't hate someone that you share memories with. It's all love. And it's I'm trying not to trigger Rich to making it a certain
No. Good.
I'm like, I know Rich is chopping this up. He's like, oh, you
no. I don't want to take it. I'll be honest. I don't want to. I kind of want to take it there, but I don't really want to take it there. Let me get back to a question that Blurdy asked earlier about King David. My thoughts on that. If you could pull that up, because he mentioned it twice. I wanted to let him know I wasn't ignoring the question. He said, "Hey, Rich, would it be fair to call Sammy an inversion of King David in the sense that David's harp playing and singing calls the torment experience the lead saw, while Sammy's music is called the evil?" I would say it not necessarily so. The thing is, he tells the head vampire, that dude there, he tells Sammy, I came here for you. He sees Sammy as innocent. He sees innocent. And that's the thing about the evil. The evil wants to corrupt the innocent. That's the whole purpose. The evil gets no satisfaction out of corrupting the evil. Even the Bible says Satan can't cast out Satan. Okay, so it's always the evil. Remember what the narrator said early in the film, that music has a way of, to your point, has a way of breaking the thread, or the how did he put it, Derek?
The veil.
Breaking the veil, but it also attracts the evil. So in that way, that is very, very true, but I won't go all the way to say that, because ultimately it's not because he's being called evil. The evil wants to make him evil. Because Sammy in and of himself is a quote unquote good guy. He's not the protagonist in the film. He happens to be the focus of the film. There is really no protagonist. In my opinion, it's the music that's the protagonist driving the whole thing. Sammy just happens to be the instrument that this is happening through. I don't want to go too deep, because I'm telling y'all, we could go some places with this film. And so again, it's one of those things where, corruption is something that people oftentimes don't fully understand. Why does the evil want to corrupt the innocent? Because that's what the devil desires to do. You got to go back to Job for that. Job, when God asked Job, he said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" He said, "Well, yeah, sure I have." He said, "But the problem is you got a hedge of protection around it. Remove that hedge and he'll curse you to his face." That is the essence of why evil wants to corrupt innocence. That's why we have sin in the world, and that's why this movie is called Sinners, because the whole object of the evil is to corrupt and to have you die in your sins. The music, however, is the expression of salvation in the movie. It's what everybody has in common, right? But why is he trying to go after? He said, "I came all this way for you. Yeah, I bit all these other people, but I bit them here because of you, Sammy." So that's a good point there, bro. Shout out to Blurty. He got something with that.
I like this comment by Jay Wilkes. Remick mocked the Klan by saying the scripture with Sammy. Mm-hmm. That was a nod to how Christianity was used against slaves, Choctaw, and the Irish. Incredible symbolism.
Here's the thing. Why are you thinking about it? Let me say that about that part. The thing is that oh boy, he had said he knew those scriptures like everybody. The devil knows the scriptures. The demons tremble and they believe. So it's nothing new to that. But yes, there is incredible symbolism in that, but there's no power in the Lord's Prayer. That's a Catholic Hollywood thing. That is literally a Catholic Hollywood thing where, you know what I'm saying, the Catholic Church has been the I would say the de facto champion of good in Hollywood. They go with Catholics. I don't know why. They don't hang out with Pentecostal folk or Baptist folk like myself. You get a different story. But I will just say that everything is by faith. And so you saying a prayer is not going to cause nothing to tremble. You got to remember, this is about music. This story is about music. Satan was the chief musician. I mean, do we need to really go down a deeper hole in that?
I mean, music is power. That's what ultimately that they're trying to convey. Music is a form of power. It's a form of communication. You can use music here to share memories, mm-hmm. right? To pierce through time, to peer back through time and have a connection with your ancestors, which brings us to what I consider the most pivotal scene in the entire film. Certainly the most poignant one.
It's the scene.
The scene. It is such a scene that all we have to do is refer to it as the scene to anyone who's seen the movie, and they know exactly what you're talking about. So, and I'm sure you have some pictures of this, Derek, or something.
Not really, actually.
Sammy ultimately, there's a picture of Sammy in the juke joint. So Sammy ultimately gets his shot. He gets to shoot his shot in the juke joint. And he starts to play his music. And remember, we're reminded at the very beginning of the film that they talk about how music, certain types of music, certain people have the ability to pierce the veil. They said in Africa, they refer to as griots, right? Sammy plays this number. This actor, this young man, this gospel singing young man, that obscurity. I don't know if it's obscure or not. I'm just saying that. And put in this film. Plays this song that you felt. If you have any sense of soul, you felt the song. You felt the song. And what was beautiful about this is this particular scene needs to be like its own music video. Is as he's playing this soulful bluesy song and he's talking about everything, you start to see glimpses back through time where you see West Africans, right? He goes back in time. You even go forward in time,
Mhm.
and you see a Bootsy Collins type guy. You see like a jazzy singer play some music. You see, or an R&B singer. Then you see someone with turntables and a guy breakdancing.
Hip hop.
Right? You see hip hop. It goes forward in time. And then you're piercing the, they said when you're piercing the veil, you're able to reach your ancestors. You're able to commune and reach and bring out with your ancestors. So then you also see these Chinese ancestors pop up. Why? Because the Chows are there. And so you start to see these two Chinese ancestors there as well. I'm not doing the scene justice because I've only seen the movie
I mean,
once.
it's a hodgepodge, a mesh of different styles and genre played out in this party scene, because that's really what it is. It's a party scene. This is what happens in, when the party's jumping, as they say. And the biggest symbolic is when the roof
burned
away. And we all know, especially those of us that in the Black culture, we've seen it. If you didn't say it in the movie, the roof is
on fire.
We all have said that in a party, okay? And so, literally talking about burning down the house.
Yeah.
That's literally what happened in that particular scene.
Open the gates, and ultimately, the vampires are drawn in by Sammy singing, because Remick recognizes, and he says, I want Sammy. When he comes to the door, I want Sammy.
By the way, we haven't introduced Remick, by the way.
Oh, I thought we kind of talked about him already. So Remick is the main vampire. Which one? Oh, that's cornbread. And all right. So Remick is the main vampire. We first see him running from the Choctaw Indian vampire hunters. And he runs into the establishment, the house of these two Klansmen. I forget their names. But he seeks shelter with them. And the two clans people said, well, that's white folk, and these Indians are trying to go after another white man. So we're just going to shun them away and protect our fellow white brethren. Not knowing that he's a vampire. So he, of course, converts them. The Choctaw Indian said, beware, he's not what you think he is. They just see a white man. And it's like, no, that's not what he is. He even speaks with a Southern accent to them initially. And you realize later on, when he starts speaking Irish, that's who he truly is. But if you notice, when he first approaches the house, the Juke's joint, and he's trying to buy his way in, he gives some gold to Mary. Says, oh, I got money. We have money to spend, he keeps saying. The money he had was like Roman gold. So like, how old is this guy? Does he go back to ancient Celtic Ireland when the Romans invaded England and Ireland? Because the Romans went up that far. Is that how far back he goes? It seems like he does. in which case, again, he's beyond the concepts of what we in America separate ourselves with. He doesn't care about all that. He predates all of that foolishness, those labels. So from him, his perspective, I want to create a new world, a new family that is based on quote unquote love. It's insidious because you think about it, fast forwarding a bit, he starts biting people and they start biting people, and all of a sudden he's got a huge army of black folk, white folk, Chinese folk, all together under one vampire banner. And they all love each other. When Cornbread comes up and he's like, and they're challenging him, they're trying to figuring out that he's a vampire. When he asks, hey, may I have permission to come back inside? And they're like, what do you want? What's motivating you? Why do you want to come in here? Well, I'm here to spread love. I can't just walk in there. That's why I have to ask to come in. Well, why do you need to ask? Because it'd be impolite, and I'm about love. I'm just here to spread love. They keep saying that, right? And for them, spreading love means being unified under the singular consciousness of being a vampire.
Well, that, and he's a vampire, so he has to be invited in. He can't breach the threshold of the house, and
right,
he's invited in.
I mean, they quickly go through all the vampire tropes, right? Can't be exposed to sunlight. Garlic can't tolerate garlic. Can't tolerate silver. Stake through the heart. This is a cool shot because you realize in this shot there's no superheroes in this movie. It's just about survival. They're just survivors. These are the survivors of the initial wave.
But see, that scene doesn't even take place.
What do you mean?
That scene right there doesn't take place if the Asian Miss Chow.
Oh my God.
She literally invited them in.
Bro, man, there were people in the theater, including myself, that said, damn it.
She literally invited them in.
I had a brother sitting next to me. He's like, come on, man.
So that's the and see, that was the turn of events, because you got to remember how we see these characters in the beginning is not how we see them in the latter end of the movie. We look at Mrs. Chow as, you know, she's loving, she's hanging out, she's down with the brothers, she's doing some work for them, that kind of thing. And now she becomes the reason why most of them get bitten, most of them die. Just because she was, you know, she was in her rage and in her feelings about old boy telling us, we're gonna go to town and we're gonna visit your daughter.
I also wonder if Ryan Coogler, by having these Chinese allies, was making a statement politically, but that's probably a time for another discussion.
Well, it's probably some of that in there as well. But I will say that
that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, but here's the thing about that though. The relationships that we've had with Asian people have been, for the most part, very good. It's only really been here that it's been really adversarial. I mean, there were Asian people in Africa, there were African people in Asia. It's not like the original man did not spend time, you know, in the Orient or in the, you know, part of Asia. Matter of fact, for all of you 5%ers and all that, I mean, people call him the black man, the original Asiatic black man. And so there's this relationship that we have that's been there for thousands of years. So it's not like there's ever been an issue. It's only when America became this thing where black folk were in the hood, in these ghettos, and a lot of Asian people came in and became merchants. We couldn't get them. They were literally a buffer class. The white folks weren't selling us. They left the neighborhood. They saw an opportunity to make money, and history continues on and on. This adversarial way that we have, and that was depicted in Menace to Society. That happens every day. Those kind of that contention or that tension that we have with people that come in and to our neighborhoods, and they sell us these products and they treat us unfairly or unkind at times. And to be fair, most times we treat them the same.
Well,
good, bad, or different. That's what it is.
I know her actions. They frustrated me. They frustrated a lot of people. But her actions, that was just a plot device because they had to have some way for the vampires to be able to get in.
I know.
How else are they going to get in?
But that's what makes it a classic.
Right?
In all classic horror films, you have to have that one moment where you're like, don't go in that room.
Don't go in
that room. Why are you going to go in that room? Why are you walking too close to that room? Why don't you turn around and walk away? No, I know you heard that sound. Do not walk towards the sound. And it's usually the black people like, no, don't go do that. Yeah, and me as a black person again is watching like, no, Mrs. Child, why did you just say that?
Yeah. Y'all know what? Y'all need to get that hashtag going. Hashtag Miss Child was right.
Miss Child. She was not right. Miss Child was very, very wrong. They would have been fine. I mean, ultimately, the vampires could have figured out, hey, all we got to do is just set the barn on fire, and they'd have to run out, and then we can just get them then.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to that type of stuff, I with what you were talking about, Rich, I tend to have more of a macro view of when I analyze these things. And
right.
As a former person who's worked at the United Nations, I will tell you, just Google the makeup of the UN Security Council, and that's all I'll say on that. All right, so what point are we at this point? We talked about the scene.
Time to wrap it up.
Well, time to wrap it up. One of the things that one of the reasons we talked about this on Black Comic Lords, this particular movie, because this is not a movie that's based on a comic book, is because a lot of people had questions about, and we still have to talk about the end. A lot of people had questions about whether this movie was influenced by comic books, because Ryan Coogler, obviously having his chops from the Black Panther films and being involved at MCU and what have you, he's rumored to have done a Blade pitch set in the 1920s. Some people believe that this movie was kind of what an offspring of them turning down his Blade pitch for a 1920s version of Blade. Because Blade, if you're not familiar with the comics, actually is, he started out back in 1929, and he's British. And he was from London.
And what wasn't Ryan Coogler also wasn't also named as one of the producers for Bitterroot when that was optioned?
Yeah. So that was the other thing, is that he was a producer and rumored, a producer for Bitterroot, was going to be directed by Regina King. So that was that other aspect of it. When the trailer dropped, people immediately said, oh, Ryan Coogler, this is his version of Bitterroot. This is what he really wanted to do with Bitterroot. And we had Sanford Green and Chuck Brown and David on the show, and they clearly said, hey, we've talked to those people, and no, this has nothing to do with Bitterroot. And they're right. They proved to be right. It had nothing to do with Bitterroot. What it did have something to do with, however, is another comic book that no one saw coming. Philadelphia. If you were to take this film and say this was a prequel for Philadelphia, let your mind marinate on that for a second and tell me if I'm wrong.
I think that there are elements from the Philadelphia universe. I wouldn't directly put it to Philadelphia, because to me, this had Nita Hawes all over it. The first volume of Nita Hawes, that was issues 1 through 6, I want to say.
Yeah.
When
I say Philadelphia, I mean Philadelphia verse.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those things. And I can't remember if it was this film. It may have been. I remember hitting Rodney Barnes up about a film that they were going to make, and I just kind of asked him. I was like, "Bro, had they talked to you about this? Because this kind of sounds like your stuff." So, you know, again, imitation is the highest form of flattery. That's what they say. So, you know. But this was well done. Shout out to Ryan Coogler for doing an amazing movie. You know, it had elements in it. And you know what's weird too? Lovecraft Country, Philadelphia, Bitterroot, all of these elements from these stories, one way or another, have shown up, which tells you the power of good storytelling. And so, again, I think that Sinners has legs.
Yeah,
I'll say it like that. They can definitely do some other stuff.
So let's talk about that, because there was a mid-credit and end-credit scene. The mid-credit scene, we fast forward to 1992. Classic hip hop era. And Sammy is all grown up. He's a grown man, he's an elderly man at this point, and decided, as we could tell, that he continued with his blues career. Traveled the world, did concerts, released albums, became famous, even had his own club that he named Perline after his love from that fateful night. In walks Stack and Mary, who apparently survived the great burning at the end of the movie, which we still haven't talked about. That we should talk about what happened to Remick in that. But you know, Stack comes in with his Coogee sweater and his semi-Gumby haircut, gold chain, looking straight out of 1992, looking like a slim Biggie Smalls. Slimmy Smalls. Mary comes in with the bone bangle earrings from back in the day, looking like one of the she was trying to do the only thing I thought was missing was an 8-ball jacket on her or something. And Stack says, look, you know, Sammy's like, first of all, how'd you survive? And they're like, yeah, we ran off before the big fire thing. And Mary ran off, and smoke did not kill me. He says, as long as you leave Sammy alone, let him live out his life, I won't kill you. We made that agreement between brothers. So Stack says, look, you know, I don't have to honor it. You're aging, you're gonna die soon. I can smell it on you. I can save you from that. You can feel great and live forever and play your music forever. Sammy declines. And he walks away. But it sets up the fact that there could be sequels to this done easily. Ryan Coogler has established an IP on his own that can continue on in sequels. But more so, the scariest thing he did, or most brilliant thing, depending on your viewpoint, is his deal with the studios to make this film. He gets a percentage of everything off the top, which is standard. But he also got creative control over the film. Like, he had final cut. So we don't have to worry about, hey, was there a director's cut of this film? He made the film he wanted to make. He had full editorial control, which is 2. Third thing, He'll let them, the studio, own the film for 25 years, after which it reverts back to his control and his ownership. He's a young guy. He presumably will be here in 25 years. More so, guess what he also did? Who's the producer on the film? His wife. His wife is the producer on the film. So his family will own this movie in perpetuity. Their children will own this movie and everything that comes from it in perpetuity.
Not the studios.
Not the studios. And when we're talking about the film, we're not talking about DVDs. We're talking about the IP itself. So if this ends up becoming a franchise, they own it all forever. That's huge. That's a deal that some up-and-coming filmmaker could not make with the studio. It shows that he has the amount of clout to been able to cut a deal like that with the studio. You have to have major bones in order to make a deal like that. But still, it's a significant deal. It's kind of like when Prince said, "Hey, I own all my master tapes now."
Right.
It's that type of thing. This could be pave the way for the future for creators. This is what the end game should be for all creators. Own your IP. When you're finished watching this film, you're not sitting there going, "Man, I can't wait to see what Coogler is going to do in the next Black Panther film." Who cares? I'm more interested in what he's going to do with this IP. Because you don't have to worry about is Kevin Feige going to accept this script? Are they going to pick the right actor? Are they going to cut out the scenes? Are they going to they're going to promote it as the black guy being the lead, like they did with Star Wars with Finn, and ultimately castrate him by the third film and make him irrelevant? You know, you're not going to worry about those type of problems when you own the IP and you're the director and you're the producer and you're the owner. Do whatever the heck you want.
You just have to come with the money. You just have to come with the money and make the sequel, though. That's the only thing.
Yeah, but this movie's already made I think it's made $46 million already, and it had a budget of like.
No doubt. I'm just saying you have to come up with the money in order to make the next movie.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing too, guys. I think y'all hitting it for sure, but this is a whole universe. They could do comics.
They could do everything. That's exactly the point.
Because remember, Michael B. Jordan, who owns the Creed franchise, he did comics. He did a limited series.
Yeah.
And that was about his daughter, which took place like 20 years, in the future. So you're right. He can do a number of things. He could really run with this ball, but of course, people are thinking about the next movie, that kind of thing. He may want to do something around television or a series. There's so much.
X-Files is his next project.
Yeah, I know X-Files is his next thing, but he could literally take this thing in multiple directions. He could that angle you were talking about Remnick and how how he came to be this vampire. You could go with that. You could deal with the natives that were on screen and then all of a sudden we never saw them again. You could deal with that plot hole. You could see where Stax and old girl Mary, what they life is like. You know what I'm saying? He could do a whole lot. The
sky's the limit, and the fact that he has the ability to do that because he's got this control over it, or he will. It's huge. One thing before I talk about the end of this, Remick, is he truly dead? Do we know definitively that Remick is dead?
Man, I saw that dude burn up.
We saw him. Well, we saw him burn up, bro. Flames, but then he
saw him burn up.
He did this spiral thing and went up in the air. Yeah, and one of the powers that vampires had is to be able to turn into mist.
Yeah.
Right?
That wasn't no mist. That was smoke.
How do we know he didn't simply evaporate and go someplace?
No, Paul. He had a stake through his heart. He was burnt to a crisp.
That stake through the heart wasn't stopping him. He was still
he
having
got
full-on conversations with the dude with the stake.
Spawn thinks he needs some help with that dude's charcoal if he lived.
So there are a few loose ends.
Yeah,
one of them was
criticisms.
when Remick first shows up, right? He lands on the ground. I don't know where he came from, but he's being chased by the Choctaw Native Americans, and he's got smoke coming off of him. But the sun is still out. He wasn't on fire, and apparently he'd been running for a while. No trees around. So how is he surviving? Yet, as soon as the sun came over the horizon at the end of the movie, all the vampires started burning up. That was a loose end to me. That was
well, he's a more powerful vampire, so he could probably tolerate the sun a lot more than the other ones could. They were newly formed within an hour.
That's how you want to explain it?
That's how I want to explain it.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Now my next one. So there's a rule in a movie. It's called Chekhov's gun. Don't ever introduce something in a movie without coming back to it for a purpose later on.
Yeah, I know.
And they broke that rule with the Choctaw who were coming after him. I'm waiting the whole time to see if they're going to come in and help save everybody. You don't see them again.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that criticism 100%. They were way too interesting. They had way too much dialogue to have been introduced and not brought back.
There's a whole lot of lore that could have come from that one now.
Yeah, they really should have showed up at the end, even as just a cameo at the end. When they were getting burnt up, like have them looking over the horizon, saying, nodding their head and go, all right, well, we don't got to deal with that, or something like that, you know, or even better, set up your next film by having them speak to each other in Choctaw as they're seeing Remick get burnt up and go, well, let's move on to the next one. And then you've got your foreshadowing for your next film. Something like that would have been cool. Something like that. Yeah. My other criticisms of the film, one is purely just kind of petty. I did not like the portrayal of blood in the film. That's a reach, Paul. Sure.
You don't like the portrayal of blood. What are you talking about?
The blood looked like it was way too viscous. It didn't look like blood. It just looked like red-colored something. It looked with too liquidy to be blood. If that makes sense. Real blood is kind of thick, you know. When these vampires got stabbed, it looked like some translucent reddish colored liquid coming out of them. It didn't look like blood coming out of them. So for me, that just bothered me every time I saw it.
Okay, I got one for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay, this one got me. Grace Chow says, "Come on in," right?
Yeah.
The vampires come in and the fight is on. And all of a sudden we're seeing the good guys inside getting killed, but none of them were the main characters. Where those people come from? Because they were not in everybody else had left the building. All we had was just the key characters in there. So that one got me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some extras in that.
Why do they run? Why do they run away? Why did vampires?
They had the red. All of a sudden, red shirts were in there, and there weren't any red shirts before.
Yeah, but the vampires had the numbers. They were killing the people left and right. Even Delta Slim got eaten up by a group of them. Why did the vampires ultimately run away?
What you mean? Why did they run away?
Why did they run away?
What part are you talking about?
When what's her face? When Mutaska's character died.
Yeah, they said let's get out of here. They ran away.
Yeah, they said let's get out of here. They all ran out of the barn.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand why they did that.
Maybe they didn't want to get burned. I don't know.
They were inside the barn. If they're gonna that's the safest place to be if the sun's coming up. They could have finished off the people inside and just stayed in the barn.
unless they had a. I'm only guessing. They may have a psychological or psychic, connection with Remnick, and they sense trouble. I don't know. There were plot holes for sure, but they weren't so large that people just like looked at that and like, oh, this is a terrible film or whatever.
That's what I said. They're minor criticisms.
Yeah, they're very, very minor. So
that's why I give the film a 9.5 rather than a 10. Minor criticisms. 1-in-1 pod. Amir says, I just want the next movie to deal with the Black Panther Party werewolves. If you know, you know. Exactly. That would make a cool film. Like, you could literally have this movie spin off into the Philadelphia verse, and they would not miss a beat. Not that I would want that to happen because they're separate IP. I hope. One of the things you want to talk about, Derek, is the impact of other optioned films.
Let's talk about that.
Philadelphia, Nita Hawes, the Philadelphia verse has been optioned. Bitterroot has been optioned. The Untamed Niobe has been optioned. Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer is not only optioned, I believe I thought it was even in started production for Disney.
Supposedly, yep.
So, what does this film do for these optioned properties? Does it help it or does it hinder it?
I don't think it does anything, honestly. Just because something gets optioned doesn't mean that it's going to get made. It's just somebody's, kind of reserving it to if they want to do something with it.
Right. If this movie is
here's the thing too, I think that one of the issues is there have been stories that I've heard of a certain thing will get optioned just to take it off the board.
Exactly. That's my point.
And yeah, so I don't necessarily know that all of these properties are going to get made or whatever. Of all of those that are listed there that I'm confident are going to get made, it's probably the Untamed that leads that charge. Bitterroot at this point, I'm not sure. Philadelphia, I'm very sure. I think Rodney Barnes is just waiting to get the right deal to make sure that thing really goes like it's supposed to. And I can't speak to nothing but in terms of Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. Because that could definitely...
Of these four properties, the Untamed is almost an outlier because it's a separate type of genre. It's fantasy. These other things have horror aspects to them. So you've got period pieces with Bitterroot and Harriet Tubman being not Southern Gothic, but certainly Afro Gothic. They're period.
Well, the thing about Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer is that could backfire. Only from the standpoint that there may be some Harriet Tubman historians that may feel like that's sacrilegious. Because there was some kind, not a lot of pushback, but a lot of people didn't like the Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter. They didn't like that. So again, it could go one or two ways. I hope that if they do it, they got to do it right, and at the same time, if you get pushed from certain elements in the Black community, you can't say you didn't know, or you can't say that why people are tripping, because Harriet Tubman is not a fictional character. Harriet Tubman is a real historical, queen in our community, and did real good work. And just because you think it'd be a cool idea for her to kill white vampires. Yeah, okay, but that's the legacy of who Harriet Tubman may come into question, with this or whatever. So again, and that's no shot at the guy who's putting it out. I hope that I read the books. I thought the books were dope, but the execution on that's got to be right. It's got to be right, because
that's. Well, I was gonna say that's the key point in my mind. This Sinners. It was an auteur film, right? Ryan Coogler, it was all his. I don't think the studios changed much. Now, for any of these, if these shows or movies happen, these on the screen, this is going to be somewhere the studios have their hands on it, or are we going to let, the people, the artists do their thing? We're going to have the right artists doing their thing on it in the first place. That's the real question.
Yeah. Are they going to have the creative control to make it authentically theirs, what they envisioned from the original storylines and IP?
And I will say that that window for these properties is shrinking.
Well, that's why I bring this question up. Like, how does this film affect the windows for these properties? Like, when Rodney Barnes takes Philadelphia to be shopping it around, and he goes, does he go, hey, there's obviously a market for this type of stuff, black vampire stuff, because look at how well Sinners did? Or does the exec go, yeah, but I'd rather invest in doing more Sinners than I would doing Philadelphia? Is that what happens? I mean, I don't know how Hollywood works.
He stands to make more money doing that, right? This is his legacy now. I mean,
whose legacy?
I'm Coogler. I'm talking about Coogler.
Yeah. But look, does Ryan Coogler then produce Bitterroot when he's got Sinners?
If you got the deal, if you got that deal, it's all your IP after 25 years. Which would you take?
I don't know, man. I mean,
it's like one of those Jack Nicholson deals with Batman. Remember that, right? He got a percentage.
Yep. I mean, look, the thing with Bitterroot particularly, what derailed that or whatever, supposedly when Regina King was set to direct or whatever, we don't even know if they got a script done. We don't know none of these things. And at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, how long do we have before people lose interest? To your point, when it comes to black horror is an interesting perspective, because when I went to see this movie, I saw the trailer for Him, the Jordan Peele movie. And respectfully, I don't know what homeboy doing. I could not put my finger on what that's going to be about. It's supposed to be about a football player and his devotion or whatever, but I just don't know. The trailer was all over the place.
That was another one of my criticisms about this film. They put way too much stuff in the trailers. Way too much of the film is in the trailers.
Absolutely.
I would discourage anyone who's interested in seeing this movie from watching those trailers ahead of time, because there were scenes where you literally knew what was going to happen next because you saw it in the trailer, and that was bad.
Yeah, I was sitting there the whole time trying to figure out, okay, was he a vampire from the beginning? Was Stack a vampire from the beginning, or if so, why is he standing in the sun? Is Mary a vampire? They should have spoiled that stuff. I knew too much.
Yeah.
Well, you know what though, but here's the thing about that though. I think that some of these trailers have to put in this much information to kind of get the casual, involved. Because guess what? If you had put like this here, let's say you didn't know Ryan Coogler was attached to this film, right? Let's say an unknown. In matter of fact, you don't have Michael B. Jordan as an actor. You don't have Delroy. It's a 100% unknown cast. You would look at anybody, man, this should have been on Netflix or Tubi or something. I think it would still be a good film, but because you got this star power and you got this dope story, it banged just like it was supposed to because of who was involved, right? So a lot of these people that are going to see this movie are not us, bro. So they have to put certain things in it to gain a initial interest. Does that make sense?
It does. It also raises something that you said they had to put things in it to make it appeal to mainstream, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that this film talked about racism without talking about racism. Talked about the horrors of 1930s Mississippi without being preachy about it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to be honest and say, and not shy away from the fact that, yeah, this was a messed up situation. The Jim Crow South was horrible, was horrors, right? You can't escape that. That's why this whole concept of Southern Gothic comes from. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's kind of a living nightmare scenario in many instances, and what we get from that are stories of survival and being able to overcome adversity despite those horrors, and that's where the true brilliant stories come from.
Here's the thing, Paul. The critical thing about this, because you hit it. How many times have we heard in our space? We're talking about movies, whatever.
Yeah.
I can't see another Jim Crow movie. I can't see another slave movie.
Yeah, no more black trauma. Right.
No more black trauma. Well, you just got a whole bunch of it and you loved it.
Yeah, and we loved it because he brilliantly showed our black trauma without dwelling upon it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it literally was the background, which is what a lot of this stuff that people talk about that they don't want to see. It needs to play the background.
Right, but think about it. When they talked about the lynching, he says, "Oh, there's blood on the floor of the sawmill." You knew where that blood came from, but they didn't show it. When Delta Slim talks about his brother being lynched, they could have done a flashback and showed what happened, but they didn't do that.
Here, though, they had the sound effects from it.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
It was more powerful having him talk about it and having the actor play it out and seeing the emotions on his face and seeing their reactions and hearing the music play with all that. That was more powerful. It's kind of like when you think about the most classic horror films, you don't really see the monster. You hear the monster. You see glimpses and shadows from the monster. But that's the most horrifying horror films you can see, is when you don't actually see the monster, right? And so it plays out in your mind, and your mind makes it much more horrible than anything the director could show you on the screen. And that's what Coogler did with concepts of black trauma and racism. He talks about it, but you don't actually see it.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't really see the Klan in their robes. You saw Remick go to a house and you saw the Klan hood in the backdrop, but you don't see him wear the Klan robes. You never saw the Klan wear their robes.
Well, here's the thing.
You saw guys come in at the end and attack and say, "Yeah, we're the Klan. We're gonna kill these niggers," right?
Oh, I mean, here's the thing though.
Them wear their robes.
When in the movie itself, at the very beginning of the movie, you see where it says Mississippi 1932.
Yeah.
You already know where we're going.
Right.
You don't need a bunch of lynchings and stuff and trauma on screen to show you the environment in which this is. And then you had all the cotton fields.
Right.
You saw literally oceans of cotton fields. To kind of give you an idea of where they were going. Now, there's a question. The Rich asked the question earlier. He just re-asked it again. Was what did y'all think of the post-credit scene? I guess that's of Sammy playing the guitar. I really, initially when I saw it, I was like, okay. He's a young man playing this guitar. So it's like how it kind of gives me the idea that even though he's been traumatized by all that has happened, he hadn't lost his love for the blues. He didn't let the trauma defeat him, which is why when you see him in the pre-credit scene or the mid-credit scene, where he's an old man, the first thing you see on him, and we know that it's him, is the scars on his face that Remick gave him, right? So I kind of see that as the scene where that even though you go through some trauma, or you go through hard times or whatever. You don't have to let that, cripple you or whatever. Because he says in the song, was he singing, that he still loves the blues. So yeah, I think that that's a message for Black people. All the trauma, all of the horrible things that happen to us, you can still live and still love the very things that you have come to love in this, you know what I'm saying? Because trauma oftentimes grips people and they can't escape it. They can't get beyond it. So yeah.
Ryan Coogler showed wide panoramic shots of cotton fields, something that has an emotional resonance with many Black folk, right? The concept of cotton fields. But then he makes it look beautiful.
Yep.
Right? And he's playing the music, and you're like, oh, that's beautiful. The cotton fields are beautiful. And he shows people picking the cotton.
Yep.
Not to make it like to make it nostalgic or anything like that. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to imply. But I'm like, you could have turned that a different way. He could have easily portrayed that in a Black trauma type of way, but he didn't. So he kind of got his point across without dropping into tropes that we've seen time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have looked at our experiences in America as a ugly thing and shame, instead of embracing the beauty that's involved in it. I remember my wife and I me and my wife did a road trip down to Memphis and Arkansas, and we went to some civil rights museums and things of that nature. But we went to a place called Slave Haven, and this house literally was a part of the Underground Railroad. And we go into this building, right? And there's this 9-pound sack that they were expected, the people, sharecroppers and slaves, were expected to pick daily. Big 9-pound sack. You saw that in the movie. And this was now when they transitioned from slavery to sharecropping, remember the part when Cornbread said, man, I'm behind. I got behind my quote. I can't, I can't take off and go with you or whatever. I'm behind on my quote. This was life, right? For many Black people. But me and my wife were there, one of the things we learned about was the understanding of what watermelon really is. We've been taught that has been a shameful act for Black people to eat watermelon. And I remember our guide, she told us, she said, you got to understand something about watermelon. It was easily grown. Watermelon is filled with water, and you were outside in the sun from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. It literally saved our ancestors, our people, when they were out in the fields with no shade. And so, but we have that became something of a stereotype that we didn't enjoy, that we shouldn't enjoy. I remember I had a buddy of mine. He went to a fruit stand, and he was triggered by a white woman asking him, she had samples of watermelon on a plate. He was triggered that she would ask him, do he want some watermelon? Because she offered him some watermelon. That's what the stigma of white supremacy, making us feel bad and ashamed about our experiences, have done to us. So when you're able to see it in that panoramic view that you were talking about, and you were able to see the beauty in it, it's not that you saw the trauma. You didn't immediately see. It was just beautiful because it was a landscape.
Right.
It was history. You were literally looking at history. That was the history of the country. Much of this country in the South was tobacco and cotton fields. That's what it was. And so to be ashamed of what got us through is crazy. That's why we have movies like The Butler, that, you know, the revolutionary that, you know, he was ashamed of his father because his father was a butler. It's like, dude, this dude fed you. He clothed you because of what he did. The work he did was honorable, but he was ashamed of it. That's the kind of trauma that we experience in the Black community. They made us ashamed of our ability to survive. And our thinking has not changed. We still call people Uncle Toms, and most people don't even know who Uncle Tom was. But that's America, though.
You know, the last thing that I want to close on is this statement that Amir put in here. This also showed how our musical culture was hijacked. I hope we understand the importance of independence. You know, it's interesting. There's a lot. Look, this movie can be, and we're doing our review, but we could spend hours more unpacking scene by scene everything in this film. And there will be, I'm sure, college courses around the country that will show this film to students and pack out everything, you know, break it all down. But there's something to be said about the scene where Remick and the two white people that are with him come to the barn and said, "Hey, we like that music. Can we come in? We have money." I mean, it was almost a bit too on the nose, but it was brilliantly done. You literally had white people saying, "Hey, we like y'all's music. We have money. Let us in." And they're vampires.
Yeah.
They want to suck the blood.
I told you this would be the hall.
The white vampires say, "We'll offer you money if you let us come in so we can suck your lifeblood and take your music away from you. And then do what? We'll make you part of our collective consciousness." And we do it out of love. Right? That's what these people are saying. Like, you will join our collective consciousness. Your music will become popular. Right? We're going to take your blues and make it part of our collective and make everybody love it. Because
it was so funny, though. What was funny to me was they started playing the music, and they were the brothers and sisters were just kind of staring at them like, okay.
Was I think it was either Smoke or Stack said, "Well, I mean, that wasn't bad." when they're playing their music, like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad, but nah, we don't want you in here.
But see, that's the thing too. That's a trip. How many times have we seen the musician like Elvis, who plays our music, and we just think that that's just awesome, or the rapper like Eminem is like, "Oh man, he's the coolest there is," or whatever. Like, okay, but this is kind of what that kind of feeds into, because when we let people in, yes, that kind of stuff comes out of that.
This is that scene was an allegory on you don't invite everybody to the cookout.
Yep.
That's
Big, thank you for the super chat. We got to wrap this up, y'all. We got to go, man. We could talk another hour on this.
We literally could. But we promised we were actually supposed to be done with this a half an hour ago. What is it that you always say? Don't charge it to my head, charge it to my heart, or something. What is it you say, Richard?
Yeah, don't charge it to my head. I mean, don't charge it to my heart. Charge it to my head. Yeah, my head is where I wasn't thinking. So my heart is in the right place. I wanted to be gone half hour ago. We still had to get some. Listen, we scratched the surface on this thing.
Scratch the surface. This is not a complete review. This is our initial thoughts after seeing the film. We each saw the movie once, and we just wanted to share our initial thoughts.
Yeah, we Lord have mercy. I mean, again, y'all gonna watch social media. Y'all gonna see a lot of different posts about what they thought they saw and that kind of thing. It's a fantastic movie. But let me just say this and go on the record and we get out of here. Don't let this amazing movie distract from the fact that we don't want Ryan Coogler anywhere near Black Panther. And with that said, it's your boy Rich, Paul, and Derek. We out.
100% facts. Coogler, stick to making films like this. This is your wheelhouse now, right? Stick to your own IP. If you never touch the MCU again, I'll be cool.
I'm seeing
I got
people.
nothing but love for you, brother. I got
Yeah.
nothing but love for you. You're a brilliant, brilliant man and an artist.
Yeah.
No more
I don't want you nowhere near Disney. I'm sorry.
no more Black Panther. Just don't touch that anymore. Producer, be a producer on it. Just
Derek, what else you got, man?
We're all good, man. We're good.
All right.
I didn't have the disclaimer queued up. I didn't know.
Black Comic Lords. We got you.